This is not what humans should look like, with big heads, limbs like dead branches, a thin transparent belly. There was no fear in his eyes, only silence. This is 1968. The Biafran baby who shocked the world, but that's not the irony. And here's the irony. These starving children, I stepped on the most valuable thing in the world at that time, billions of barrels of trickling crude oil, a country sitting on a mountain of gold, but starving to death. One lasted for 30 months. The republic was wiped off the map. This is not from an African tribe. Thank you. This is after World War II. Dirty big country hunt British rifles here, fighting alongside Soviet MiGs and the French mercenaries. But in the same battle call as Israeli agents. Is it messy? Because in the face of interest doctrine is all business. Welcome back to the world. After World War II, the country's fortunes rose and fell for 80 years. I am Governor Yang Gui. Your support and sharing are the driving force for my update. Today we talk about the eighth death, Biafra. Act 1 Rift. When the train pulled back the headless body, you have to tell the story. We need to get out of the textbooks the principle of national consciousness. Let's go straight back to that night in 1966. Nigeria, at that time known by the British as the Giant of Africa. The British are gone, but they left behind a huge thunder. They made this land old. More than 300 ethnic groups that have never lived together, forcibly pinched together. In the north are the House of Fulani, who believe in Islam, conservative and strong. The south is dominated by Christian Igbo, smart and good at business, even called the Jews of Africa. The British are chicken thieves. They play north to south. But Igbo people quit. A blogger has money and skills, and the will. Why are you angry with your poor brother? The flashpoint of the conflict is full of blood. After 2 coups in 1966, the anger of the north burns towards a group of people. This is not war, it's carnage. In the northern city, thousands of bloggers cut down on the street by neighbors. The most terrifying scene took place at the train station. A column from the north, the train bound for Yibran's hometown East District, loaded with refugees, doors open. People on the platform vomited. The car is full of corpses. There's even a headless corpse. It was posed in a weird way. What national unity is this moment? What African giant? It's all broken for a blogger. This is no longer a political issue, it's survival. Their leader, the one with the big beard, Australian Valley Lieutenant Colonel, graduated from Oxford University. Looking at the car full of corpses, understood one thing: except for ourselves, no one can protect us. May 30th, 1967, Australia Valley declares independence for the eastern region, establishment of the Republic of Biafra. That's a beautiful name. This is from the Gulf of Biafra in the Atlantic. But at this moment nobody knows. The name will become synonymous with hunger. Act 2 Hunting strange bedfellows. Biafra becomes independent. According to the cool smell logic of our modern people, this should be the story of the oppressed striking back and building a nation, right? I have oil in my hand, so I don't panic. Buy a gun, buy a cannon, and that's it. It's a pity that the reality is not a cool pattern. It's a game. Biafra made a fatal mistake. They underestimated the allure of oil for great powers. It also overestimates the moral bottom line of the West. The then federal government of Nigeria, that is, the general named Goon from the north, immediately declare this a rebellion, call for police action. This was not only one of the worst civil wars since World War II, it's the most magical mashup of the Cold War. And here we are with a couple of odd partners. Here comes the Brits. Why? Because Shell is there. The UK seeks to safeguard its oil interests, sent a large number of weapons to the federal government, and Saracen armored vehicles. The Soviets are coming. Why? Because of the Soviet Union. In this traditional British sphere of influence, the Soviet Union sent MiG-17 fighter jets directly, and 12-28 bombers. Britain and the Soviet Union, bitter Cold War enemies, on the battlefield in Nigeria, shake hands for the same goal. What about here in Biafra? Who is supporting them? General de Gaulle. Although not explicitly acknowledging Biafra, but in private, there are many weapons, because France wants to know about this English-speaking behemoth, so that the surrounding French-speaking countries can catch their breath and a piece of the oil. And Portugal, South Africa, even Israel secretly supports the federal government, possessing absolute air superiority and heavy weapons, while Biafra just old rifles and guns. Full of anger, a few months into the war, Biafra's access to the sea is blocked. Oil can't be shipped out. That's black mud. Can't get a penny, can't get a grain of rice. Act 3. Hunger as a weapon. It's cruel. Please be mentally prepared when quick military victories turn into tug of war. The federal government has sent the most bad tactics. Hunger lockdown. Minister of Finance of the federal government The one that became very famous, Avalovo, said a famous quote that sent a chill down your spine: starvation is a legitimate weapon of war. We don't want to hear anyone say we're feeding the dead. Feed the dead. If you saw what Biafra looked like at that time, you know how vicious that sentence is. Pull to blockade. Biafra is an island on land. Food can't get in, drugs can't get in, salt can't get in. What kind of death is this? The first is muscle atrophy. Body to survive, start burning your own fat and muscle, and then you get the famous Queijo disease. This is a severe protein deficiency. The children's hair turned as red as dry grass. The stomach is swollen like a balloon. Because of ascites, the skin breaks when touched. It's not blood, it's yellow water. Data is cruel, but I have to read it to you every day. At its peak in 1968, note that 3,000 to 5,000 people die of hunger every day. There are even statistics that say at its peak, more than 10,000 people died every day throughout the war. About 2 million to 3 million people died. The vast majority of them are not killed by bullets. He died of an empty stomach. At that time, on TV screens all over the world, this is the first time such an intuitive live broadcast of death has appeared. Also at that time, there's a new word, compassion, in the West. Fatigue. But it also prompts, it gave birth to the modern execution of Humanitarian aid. A group of French doctors who couldn't take it anymore despite government bans rushed into Biafra to save lives. The doctors then formed an organization. You've all heard of Doctors Without Borders. But how many people can be saved? In this chess game of great powers, Humanitarian aircraft, it was nicknamed Jesus Christ Airlines. They can only do it at night. Risking being shot down by a MiG landing in the jungle was treated as runway on the highway. The track is only 20 meters wide, no navigation lights. On either side are burning oil drums. Every pilot who lands, it's all a gamble with death. Act 4 reflection. The last Biafran baby. Just when Biafra was about to give up, the story appears once a very Hollywood backlight. This could be the whole tragedy, the only thing that makes people feel hot. But there are very sad moments. One called the Swedish Count of Karl von Rosen appeared. This guy is a real tough guy, saved Jews in World War II. Later flew a plane to the United Nations. He couldn't stand it. The Federal Air Force bombarded the refugee camp, decided to go big. He got 5 small ones. MFI-9 trainer, like a toy. How small is this plane? It was originally used for civil aviation trainees, or what farmers used to spray pesticides. Rosen loaded these small planes with rocket launchers. Give them a cute name. Afra baby. We're going to use these sparrows to blind eagles' eyes. May 1969, this miniature Air Force takes off. They flew against the treetops, exploiting radar blind spots, unknowingly touched the federal airfield. Then there was a massacre. A few toy planes put Soviet-aided MiG-17-1228 bombers blast up a pile of scrap metal on the ground. This moment, the whole world was stunned. This is a classic grassroots counterattack in modern terms. It is a hand-rubbing fighter jet. Explode the heavy weapons of the big country. It was the Biafran's finale. Their morale was really high that month. But friends, tactical miracles don't save strategic dead ends. A few small planes won't change the reality of having no food to eat. Count Rosen is a hero, but he is not a god. He can blow up a few planes, but he can't generate millions of tons of grain. Act 5 Endgame. Without a victor. The time has come to January 1970. After 30 months, Biafra, the string is finally broken. Federal forces launch final push. This time, they don't want to procrastinate anymore. Biafra's defenses were pierced like paper. The one who once sent the leader, who vowed to fight to the last man. Australia Valley at this critical juncture made a historical evaluation polarization decision on January 11th. On the eve of the fall of this land, Australian Valley with family, the guard and his Mercedes boarded a plane bound for Cote d'Ivoire. He said he was seeking peace, but in the eyes of the soldiers left to die, this is running away. Stay to clean up the mess. It's the Chief of Staff, General Philippe Afian. This is a true tragic hero, looking at the devastated home, looking at the soldiers who couldn't even lift their guns. He said something. We don't just face military failure, facing genocide. If you continue to fight, the medical blogging nation will cease to exist. January 15, 1970, Biafra officially surrenders. The one that was once on the map, the republic that existed for 927 days after the war. The Nigerian government announced that it had disappeared. There are no winners, no conquered, no victor, no vanquished. If you don't read the history books, it's hard for you to imagine how short is life in this country. He only lived 927 days. It was the size of Panama in the beginning. Beaten to only 1/10 left, his army expanded from 3,000 to 50,000, but still can't stop the hunger, and his only inheritance, maybe that's the kind of earth bomb called Ognigui, and a bloody lesson about oil, that's the end. But we can't just watch the fun. What does Biafra's death leave us? The first is that the man is innocent, a country that avoids its crimes, yet there was no oil in Biafra. Maybe he has already succeeded independently, or no one cares about him at all. It's because he's so rich, so he had to die. In a lack of sovereignty in the hands of weak countries with protective capabilities, resources are not wealth, it's a life-threatening blessing. You think it's black gold? It's actually blood. Second, do not overestimate the conscience of the international community in this war. We saw the most magical team, even the humanitarian aid at that time, both prolonged the war, to some extent resulting in more deaths. It was brutal, but very dialectical. If you surrender early, is it possible to avoid 1 million deaths? Or for freedom? It's worth dying. For half the people, there is no standard answer to this question, only the difference in position. The tragedy of Biafra is not just for the Igbo. He was, during the Cold War, a microcosm of the fate of the developing world. He told us, in a world where the law of the jungle is still in effect, unity and stability are more important than anything else due to the cost of division. It usually takes generations of blood to pay for it. The conclusion and subordinate notice: 30 months of national luck, 2 million bones. Biafra, in the most tragic way, leave a message to the world about hunger and the scarlet casting of sovereignty. But that's not even the most shocking part. Just 5 years later, in Asia, an even bigger collapse is about to happen. That's a superpower. The moment you swallow your broken teeth, it is a person who claims to own the world, a country with the 4th largest air force. The moment it falls apart in dozens of days. Next episode preview: 1975 South Vietnamese death, Saigon iron fist smash, the republic disappears. I am Yang Guo. We are in the ruins of history, the truth about reorganizing the world. Follow me, and see you next time.